Hello and welcome to Wednesday's Words of Worship. I'm Kevin, the worship pastor at Mount Pleasant Church. Now, I think most of us would agree that we're living in some uncertain and perilous times. They don't really seem to make sense for any of us that function with any amount of reason or common sense. I mean, people are striving for our autonomy, and things just don't make sense for most of us. There's shortages and all kinds of things going on. And, our church culture often follows in the same vein because we do things that maybe don't make sense to us. We do things that we try to blend the Bible and the secular culture, and it really doesn't work. Our worship is no different. Our worship has to be motivated by our love and respect, our submission and our appreciation for who God is. Tom Crowder makes the observation that in order to become a true worshiper, we need to recognize who God is, because often our perception of God is way too small. We come to church and we sing a couple songs and we call it worship. Often we're not focused enough to enjoy or to meditate on the meaning of the words that we're singing, let alone to direct our focus, our passion, and our love towards the object of those songs, God. Robert Bailey states that we cannot worship rightly until we recapture as a principal element of worship the overwhelming sense of awe and reverence in the presence of God. Now, I love the story in 1 Kings where the prophet Elijah faces off against the prophets of Baal or Baal, depending on how you're used to hearing it. The Israelites had once again turned their backs on God, and idol worship was now a part of their culture. So Elijah sets up a showdown to face off against the prophets of Baal, to prove that God is the one true God. So they take 2 bulls and they prepare them for sacrifice. They build altars of stones, they put wood on them, and they lay the bulls on the top of the wood. Then Elijah says, "You cry out to Baal, and I'll cry out to the true living God and the God of Israel, and whoever sends fire from heaven, that's the real God." So in the account, the prophets of Baal jump around and they call out to Baal to send fire from heaven and burn up the sacrifice. Of course, nothing happens because Baal is a false god and incapable of doing anything. Elijah taunts him a little bit. He says, maybe Baal's sleeping. You ought to try to yell louder. So the prophets of Baal cut themselves with stones and they cry out and they dance and they yell from morning till evening, the Bible says. Then Elijah steps up and he says, "Okay, now it's my turn." But before Elijah prays to God, he has water poured all over the sacrifice and even a little moat or a trench around the altar to hold all the extra water. The wood is wet, the bull was soaked, and the water and the trench was full. So how could fire burn all of this water? But then Elijah cries out to God and asks God to show the people his power so that there would be no question who the real God was. God sent fire from heaven that not only burned the wood and the sacrifice, but it burned up the stones and all of the water. There was nothing left. It was all burned up and it was swept away. And when the people of Israel saw this, the Bible says that they fell on their faces and said, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." In an instance like that, we don't need to be told how to respond. They responded in awe by falling face down in the presence and the power of an awesome God. They worshiped God for who He was. They worshiped rightly with an overwhelming sense of awe and reverence in God's presence. I hope that as you worship God this week, that you will stand before Him, that you will kneel before Him, and that you will bow your heart before Him with the true awe and reverence that He deserves. Hey, thanks for listening, and I hope to see you again next week.